Because my entire health tanked because I was in very traumatic based relationships, whether it's domestic violence, trauma bonding, codependency, very self-abandoning. And the only way that I found myself finding a sense of control was through obsessing about health. Like I went very orthorexic. I had an eating disorder, a lot of hormonal issues, all from living within this trauma response. And so I found myself studying trauma and then studying relationships and realizing, oh, all of this is all correlated in relationship with self.
On Connecting the Dots, we aim to redefine what the term healthy means by learning from experts, identifying different areas of our life that impact our well-being, and becoming our greatest health advocates.
We believe that by making small lifestyle changes, people can not only manage, but also prevent a wide range of chronic illnesses we are taught to believe are normal in our society today.
My name's Kathleen Carney. I'm a nutritionist, foodie, author, and creator and co-host of this raw, real, and sometimes ridiculous show.
And I'm Melissa Chamis, the other half of Connecting the Dots. I'm also a certified yoga instructor, Reiki 1 practitioner, and a hustler just trying to survive in corporate America.
We are close friends who bonded over our messy healing journeys and are eager to share our experiences with you.
So come join this journey with us as we all learn to connect the dots between the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of being human.
We now know that 80% of the reason why people go to the doctor's office is because of stress. It's a stress-induced illness.
So if we want to be working on healing the body, the gut and the brain have to be worked on together.
People get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Never accept that, oh, I'm just always going to be this way, because there's always something you can do about it.
So make one lifestyle choice after another and do it with support.
The future of health looks like prevention.
It's going to be more common for everybody to have their own customized health plan.
Our health is no different than the health of the planet.
It's never too late to feel great.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Connecting the Dots. This is episode 7, and I can't believe we're already on episode 7. This is my lucky number, so I told Kath I had to be the one to introduce this. And this episode is also coming out the day before Valentine's Day, so in honor of the Day of Love, we thought we'd have an episode for you all about relationships. But before we get into that, I just wanted to give everyone a huge thank you who has listened to us and supported us and given us all the feedback for this show. We couldn't have done it without you guys. And especially for me, this has been my first season on the show since Kath was a solo on season 1. So it's been a learning curve, but it's been very interesting and very fun and exciting. So I just appreciate all the support. And if you want to continue supporting us, please leave us a 5-star rating and a written review wherever you listen to podcasts and send it to a friend. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been so amazing in the last, it's only been a little over a month and a half since we launched. And it's so fun to get those texts, emails, DMs of people's reactions to the show. It's always a little scary releasing episodes where we either talk about our personal life or discuss topics that can be a little bit controversial or woo-woo. But it's always really encouraging when we hear your feedback and how it helped you. So looking forward to hearing what you think of this episode, because let me tell you, it gets juicy. We have on this episode, Laura Patricia Martin, who is absolutely fabulous. I feel like that is the best word to describe her. If you look at her brand, she is the brand, and she is fabulous. She is probably the best person I know at romanticizing her life and making every single thing that she does look incredible. And I'm obsessed with her, and I'm lucky enough that she lives in Dallas. So we've actually gotten to get coffee and talk, and it felt like a conversation with a friend, but also a mentor. She had so much advice for me and was just really open to sharing. And something that really stuck with me about our conversation was I was asking her questions about her brand, Healing to Happy, which Melissa will tell you a little bit more about in a second. And she was like, honestly, like, I just wanted to create a space to help people talk about the important shit. And I was like, that's amazing, because I feel like in today's society, all we're talking about is, what do you do for work? Where do you work out? What, like, even still, as a freaking grown up, I feel like I'm still getting, oh, you went to Maryland? Were you in a sorority? And like, can we get past the small talk and start to like actually have real conversations? And so that's really what she does. She helps women have them, and she creates events and spaces to help people who are looking for that meaningful connection to have those in-depth conversations, even if it's the first time meeting them, which I think is such a skill and so cool. So we obviously had to have her on the show when her team reached out to us and asked if we could do a collab. So we were actually on her podcast and she was on ours. She released our podcast episode a little bit sooner than we were able to. So after you listen to this one, please go ahead and listen to our episode with her, because they really do kind of vibe off of each other. And we mention, I forget which one we recorded first, but like we mention the other episode. So it's like a 2-part series.
Yeah. So Laura Patricia Martin is actually a trauma and relationship specialist. And like Kath said, she's the founder of Healing to Happy, which is her brand. Talks all about relationships and communication and boundaries and healing from trauma. And in this episode, we talk all about that. She explains the attachment styles probably better than any other person I've ever heard explained it. And I listen to a lot of podcasts on this stuff. So kudos to her on that one. But she really gets raw and real about her story and how she got to where she is. And she's basically teaching people from the experiences she had. And what I love about her, and like she promotes this on her podcast too, like talks a lot about like the what high functioning codependency looks like for those high functioning executives and businesswomen. And like, honestly, me, I could definitely relate to that. And I think it's stuff that's not always talked about. Like you talk about the typical, what the typical attachment styles look like, but it makes it more relatable to everyone. So yeah. And also she's a fellow Libra and she loves Eminem. And if you know me, I'm obsessed with Eminem too. So I was like, okay, we were meant to meet. Like we are now best friends. I love you. So yeah, it was just such a fun conversation. So on the topic of that, talk about Valentine's Day. Kath, what are you doing for Valentine's Day? You and Luke got any plans?
Yeah, like nothing really crazy, but for Christmas, actually, Luke got us dance lessons. Well, me dance lessons, but he's my partner, so he gets to come along for the ride. And we've been learning salsa, two-step, and country western swing, which is basically the same thing as the club swing. So it's actually, we're getting 4 dances in 3, which is really fun. And we have our last dance lesson on Valentine's Day. And then we're going out to dinner afterwards at this place in Dallas that the chef was just nominated for a James Beard Award. So I'm so freaking excited.
What is James Beard Award?
Have you ever watched Top Chef?
No.
Oh,
maybe like it even
okay.
know.
Well, here's what you need to do with all of your free time that you don't have. You need to watch all 17 seasons of Top Chef on Hulu. Okay. Yeah,
I'll add that to the
yeah, Luke and I couldn't agree on what to watch when we first moved in together, and that was it. So we've watched them all.
That's a commitment in itself, probably a bigger commitment than moving in together, if it sounds like it to me.
Probably. But so anyways, the James Beard Award is basically like one of those prestigious awards in cooking. I can't really explain all that it is, but if you get one, it's a big deal. Like a lot of the contestants now, it's a requirement to be on Top Chef to have one or to be nominated for one. So it's a big deal.
The only like cooking award I know is like Michelin star restaurants, but that's about it. Fun fact for anyone who doesn't know, Michelin star is run by a tire company, Michelin. So our food industry ratings come from a tire company. Just a fun fact if you didn't know that. But that sounds fun. You could definitely tell I'm not from Texas because I have no idea what club swing is either. But it sounds very Texas.
I didn't know what it was either. Let me tell you, I'm picturing like 1950s, like I don't know what I was picturing, but it's been really, really fun. And it's been a cool activity to like truly get out of my comfort zone and also get back to just like being a kid again. Like you're just like having fun. Like there's no pressure and you're just doing something fun that's totally out of your comfort zone. So yeah, it's been fun. I'm kind of sad that it's our last lesson on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, gotta perform then. Gotta show those dance moves somewhere.
I'll do it live of our showcase.
Please, I think I need to see that.
I'm done. Do you have any plans?
Considering I'm very single, no. My only plans are well, Monday on Valentine's Day, the new Summer House season comes out. So me and Ryder, for those who don't know, Ryder is my dog. We'll be hanging out, ordering food, and probably watching Summer House. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, for my single friends on Valentine's Day, use that day for a little self-care and treat yourself a little extra.
Or you can join the Welcome to Wellness group on February 9th and 23rd. It's all about self-love and self-care this month. We don't need no men or women, whatever you're into.
There you go. Join the Welcome to Wellness program with Kath.
Yep. How has it been though, like meeting new people since you moved to Miami?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. For those who don't know, I moved to Miami probably a month ago now, and considering I don't drink, which I've talked about in previous episodes, it was kind of something I was a little nervous about, like going out, meeting friends, and just saying, yeah, no, I don't drink. But it's been a lot better than I expected. I actually made a friend this weekend who doesn't drink, and I'm starting to notice that there are more people than I thought, at least in Miami, than there was in New York, that really don't drink, and they still go out and have fun and like go to concerts. So it's kind of nice that way. This year my goal is to start dating again. I mean, I'm just not really good when it comes to dating apps, but and then figure out how that works with not drinking, because I always would joke last year. It was like, okay, meeting someone on a dating app who doesn't drink, has all these food issues. I'm like, red flag central. Come on. Like, why is anyone like a much better meeting in person? So this year, hopefully Miami is a lot better with that. And there's more people like me out there. But we're going to test it out once I get a little bit more settled. So more to come on that. But it was nice though when we had Sarah Kate on, it was episode 4 about rethinking drinking. I did get a lot of texts and a lot of good feedback from people on that episode. And obviously when talking about alcohol, it could be somewhat controversial because everyone has their own opinions on it. But the feedback was really, really good. And I think a lot of people resonated with it in one way or another, whether it's like really starting to rethink drinking for their own personal reasons, or just like my sister texted me, was like, I'm nervous that this episode is going to make me want to stop drinking. And then she texted me after, I was like, oh, okay, no, it didn't make me want to stop drinking, but it made me really like think about why am I drinking, and it is okay to drink in moderation now. So I mean, it was good to hear the feedback from people, and now I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not so alone, and we're not so alone in this whole rethinking drinking, spout.
Yeah, Melissa, I think those are such good reflections. And I feel like since we've released that episode, I've gotten so many like winks and reminders of like, I don't need alcohol to have fun or connect with people or have meaningful conversations. Cause I feel like sometimes I used to use like that liquid courage as a crutch to bring up things, not like anything too serious, but just like wanting to ask people how they're doing or what's going on in their lives, and like feeling like I needed to have that to bond or something. I don't know. But one of the reasons that I really love Laura Patricia Martin, our guest this week, is because she's opening up containers and spaces to have these conversations on her social media, on her podcast, in-person events, and in her Healing to Happy community on Voxer. And so I just love that she's creating so many opportunities to have these raw, real, and honest conversations about your deepest traumas to getting everything that you want out of life. So I'm very excited for everybody to hear this episode and get to know her a little bit. And before we jump in, we have a couple ads for our partners. So Melissa, you want to kick us off?
Okay, y'all, it's time to switch up your Valentine's Day gifts this year. From flowers, chocolates, and teddy bears to teas, tinctures, and bitters. Specifically, Organic Olivia's The Open Heart Tea, Flowers for My Love, and Spice It Up Love Bitters. She designed these products to deepen your connection with others, decrease stress, support your physical heart, and help you just get in the mood. Each product is made with rose petals, so they are still very on brand for Valentine's Day. So you can get them as a gift for your boo or just as a gift for yourself if you're single like me. And support the show by purchasing them through our affiliate link in the show notes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make sure all of your parts are working this Valentine's Day week, you should probably add Why Not Natural Marine Collagen plus Biotin and D3 plus K2 to your supplement regimen. I don't want to get too graphic with y'all, but let's just say these supplements will help the men keep it up and help the women keep it tight. You can purchase these two supplements by Why Not Natural and support the show by using the link in the show notes.
All right, I gotta know what in these products helps the men keep it up and the women actually keep it tight. You gotta know.
I'm so glad that you asked. So studies have shown that collagen helps keep your skin elastic and tight. So that has shown to help keep the men, keep it up, keep the skin where it needs to be. And the women, I think that's self-explanatory. If it's keeping that skin elasticity good, you're going to be good down there. And then vitamin D, low vitamin D levels have actually been correlated with low sexual functioning. So again, it's going to help your parts to work. And I didn't put this in the ad, but it will also help you actually have a higher libido if you have higher vitamin D levels, or I shouldn't say higher, I should say normal vitamin D levels.
Wow. Science lesson too. Thank you for that. All right.
You're welcome.
Well, everyone, hope you enjoy the show and happy Valentine's Day.
Laura, thank you so much for being on Connecting the Dots with us. We are so stoked to dive into our chat together today. And before we get started, we wanted to do a little icebreaker with you. So what is something that you're currently reading, watching, or listening to?
Oh, I am currently reading, what is it called? It's over on the nightstand. I can't see it. It's like, I think it says Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, maybe, by Steve Harvey. So giving you the perspective of dating from a male side, and like, obviously men and women do not date the same, and we try to kind of go about life doing that, which is very interesting. Listening to a lot of Esther Perel things, very much in a wormhole of relationships, as my job is that. So
I didn't know he wrote a book on that. I know that there's a movie, Think Like a Man, but
yeah, it's like Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. And so he has that. And then, I mean, his two daughters are like relationship guru people based off of his principles, what he taught them. So I was just curious. My stepmother and my sister were raving all about it when I was just back home. And I was like, sure, why not? I don't agree with all of it, but it's just interesting to have a little peek inside the differences.
Well, and it's good to read things from other people's perspectives too.
Yeah, and it's very much like the concept behind not a quote unquote like woke man. It's a very just like simple man, and this is what they like, and not necessarily the type of man that I am calling into my life. But it's very interesting because I am opening up my platforms to men. So I'm like, okay, let's also peek into like that kind of perspective as well.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the book "What Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus," like the traditional,
exactly
ways.
Exactly, where it's like it's still in this like, you know, very masculine kind of not necessarily woke form. So it's nice, interesting.
Wow. let's get into a little bit more of the relationship talk, I guess. You start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your health journey, and how that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, so like you guys said before, my name is Laura Patricia Martin. I'm the founder of Healing to Happy, and I am a trauma and relationship specialist. I first started out my journey as an IBS anxiety specialist, and you would maybe wonder, how the heck does she get from talking about poop to relationships? Because my entire health tanked because I was in very traumatic based relationships, whether it's domestic violence, trauma bonding, codependency, very self-abandoning. And the only way that I found myself finding a sense of control was through obsessing about health. Like I went very orthorexic. I had an eating disorder, a lot of hormonal issues, all from living within this trauma response. And so I found myself studying trauma and then studying relationships and realizing, oh, all of this is all correlated in relationship with self is being reflected out to relationship with the world. So the relationship I had with myself was very controlling and not very nice and things of that. And that was related out to my health, which was then related out to my relationships. And so it was this kind of evolution and growth over a lifetime that I'm continually walking, continually expanding within, and now helping women really claim their power back. And men, like I said, we're stepping into that portal now too, but really claiming their power back through dating after trauma, dating after having these abusive relationships with their bodies, which may have led to traumatic and toxic relationships, and really owning the fact that intimacy and pleasure and depth and the things that make life so juicy and memorable, like we actually get to step into those portals. And without these rules, I'm sure you guys notice this with health and stuff, like when we take away those rules, it gets so much more better. Like it becomes an orgasmic way of living. Like it's the same thing about our relationships. Like there is no quick 5-step plan elimination diet thing to dating either. Like it's the same mentality that we have to kind of move away from, this whole rule book thing. And really my biggest thing is just like slaying shame around all of that and really embodying these principles and these practices to become this magnetic, just like walking beautiful being in this planet.
I love it. I think that as one who's been in a very toxic trauma-based relationship, I think that the work that you're doing is incredible. And me 5 or 6 years ago could have used someone like you, but would love to hear like how you went from being in these situations to starting Healing to Happy. Like, what was your first step to being like, wait, I could start a business about this. I could help so many people.
Yeah. So like I said, it started with nutrition. So when I was studying becoming a health coach and doing all these kind of practices, I didn't leave my abusive relationship just yet. Like at that time, it was domestic violence. I was using heavily drugs. He was a drug addict. I was 45 pounds underweight. I didn't have a purpose. I was over exercising, undersleeping, having just like a whole trauma response. Like looking at that now, you're like, what the heck? And what got me to leave that relationship was starting to look at my health, right? Like it gave me some type of purpose. It gave me I started to give myself some type of recognition that I wasn't getting from another, And so I was paying attention to what I was putting into my body. And again, I then went the whole opposite route and got very orthorexic, but still I started to lean into these self-development practices and listening to podcasts and being like, oh, like what are my actual thoughts, as opposed to being in survival mode? Like, what am I actually thinking from day to day? And that then led to people saw my life, because I lived in Thailand at the time. So Bangkok specifically is a very party centric city, and people knew me, right? Like people knew me as this party girl. I was always out. I never slept. Like people knew that. And then they saw me make this transition into I'm like being healthy. And so honestly, the day I kicked that partner out of our apartment was the day after that I got my first client. She was like, I see what you're doing. Can I pay you? And I was like, I mean, sure. Why not? I like money. And from there, I just started to create what I wanted to belong to. This is exactly what I'm doing in Dallas now around relationships and creating events around that. But like, I didn't see a health community and I wanted something there. So I wanted panels, I wanted meetups. And so I started to create this group called Bangkok Expats Healthified, and that started to go. And then I started to talk about mental health, and that started to go. And I would get clients from there, and just kind of putting these community forward events, and really created the spaces that I wanted to belong to. And from there, like I always say it, and I will still say this until the end of time is like, I'm completely an accidental entrepreneur. Like everything I do is selfishly for myself. Like everything I study, everything I'm practicing, every weird ass experiment that I step into, like it's for me. And then like something my mentor always says is for me, for you, for us. Like I'm doing it for me. And then I share what I'm doing. And then people want to get involved. And then it just kind of starts this domino effect, because I think at the end of the day, we all want to feel free. We all want to feel embodied. We all want to feel sensual. We all want to have these banging ass relationships. We all want to be healthy as fuck. We all want to like have this confidence and all this wealth and like all these kind of things. And it's like, when you're on this journey of self-discovery and you vulnerably share that, people are like, oh, can I learn? Like, what are you doing? Like, let me learn. Like, here's the vibration. It's not this like step-by-step thing. It's just like this like magnetism of like, she's doing something and I want to be in it. And it's kind of just been that my entire career, where it's like, I didn't plan to be an entrepreneur. Honestly, like I have journal articles from 2013, like in the notes section of my phone being like, I don't think I'm going to make it to age 25. I'm about to be 30. And it was like all of these notes being like, I need to apologize to this person. Like I punched this person in the face. Like I was literally on this self-destructive path, and I didn't think I'd make it past 25. And so like seeing that evolution and seeing that growth and putting one step in front of the other is just like, this wasn't the plan, but I'm fucking here for the ride, and I'm here to share what I'm doing and like openly do that in a way that also happens to impact the world. Like since I was 4 years old, I've said I wanted to change the world, and it just so happens that it's through talking about pleasure and relationships and things of that nature. And so it kind of just birthed from there of finally choosing myself first, which is hard, right? Like doing nutrition, yes, but I also went into like Al-Anon. I did like 12-step support groups. I went to NA, I went to CODA, I went to all these different self-help groups. It was really fucking hard to like step through those doors. But ultimately it was for the benefit of, you know, the whole of the collective. And at that time, that's kind of a like, I guess, a long-winded way to say like what actually got me into this space and what have you was like the deep surrender of like, I'm not living in alignment to who I actually want to be. And so therefore I'm going to just like surrender to whatever the heck is going to happen next. And it just happened that clients and entrepreneurship was the way of that.
Wow, I just got chills with your entire story. That is amazing. And I think it's interesting too. Yeah, like if once you start to surrender, you'll notice the universe kind of pushes you in the direction you need to go in, whether you think it's the right direction or not. Soon enough, that's where you end up. So I guess going off that, what type of work do you do with your clients? Like when you have a client, like how do you go about like creating a program for them? Is it personalized? Is it the same for everyone?
Yeah, so like I love creating group programs. Like right now I have a masterclass coming up calling Bounce Back from Your Breakup. And then we're stepping into like Sacred Singlehood, and they're group programs. And then I have like mini short bursts, like masterminds, like 30 days where it's in Voxer, and I'll do things like having it micro focused on something. So the one that's happening right now is dating. So how can we quantum leap our dating? Because, you know, we can only sit and talk to our girlfriends so much about what's happening in our dating life and wondering why we're cycling through things and nothing is changing. It's because we're not actually taking a trauma-informed approach, and we're just bitching about things and recycling that into an activated response into our nervous system. So anyone in that. And then my one-on-one clients, it's a wide range of things, whether it's business. Like literally I was just on a walk and I welcomed someone new into my VIP for she wants to create intimacy within her business. Other people wanted to start a business and they don't want to do the whole masculine hustle structure. And they're like, I've seen you build your business from the bottom up. I want to learn this. I have people that have been through domestic violence and now they want to learn how to date again. And so we'll go together on these long-term things. So for my VIPs, the overarching theme is trauma, right? Like we want to break through trauma responses, but that's from everything from wealth to business to relationships, right? Money, sex, power, the thing we all want. So it's all under that kind of umbrella. But my programs, like the two signature ones I have are Sacred Singlehood, which is coming up. And that's all around busting into your singleness and rocking it out. And I've had married women go through it. I've had people in relationships. I've had people fresh out of breakups. It's just becoming independent essentially. And then Unbreakably Bold, which is after you've been through trauma, like it's a very unique spin on healing trauma from a pleasure point, instead of like, let's go back to your origin story and just keep talking about how much we hate our parents, which really actually gets us nowhere. Let's talk about creating safety in the present moment so we could build resiliency for the future. And so those are the signature ones. And then I have a whole bunch of master classes, and like, honestly, I could talk for ages about how much obviously about the things that I have. Like, it's just a variety of, and that's what makes it so fun, is like your business gets to be whatever the fuck you're lit up about. And then there's like these little pillars that you get to tap into, and it's so wide and it's so delicious, and there's something for everyone, which I love it.
I've definitely noticed how much you have to offer. Since we've decided that we're going to connect and be on each other's shows, I've been on your email list and following you. And every time I'm like, oh my gosh, she's talking about this. She's doing a workshop on that. When Melissa and I were trying to figure out, okay, what do we want to focus our conversation around? I was like, well, she's talking about attachment styles and codependency. And I'm like, there's just so much juiciness that we could, pick your brain about. So I love that you're really leaning into, how multifaceted your brand and your business is, because in reality, we're all multifaceted people who need more than just one piece of dating advice or one piece of, trauma healing. Like, there's so much to it. So we love that you're doing all of that and that we have you today. And so my next question really is kind of around the dating piece and like why it is so, in your opinion, so hard for people to get out of trauma-focused relationships.
Because I was literally just in Voxer this morning talking to my girls about this. We are all just a bunch of traumatized 7-year-olds running around in human suits, trying to survive. And we're living out these narratives and these projections into the world. And maybe you've experienced this while you're dating, is like they're responding to you, not in who you are in this present moment. And I've done this 1,000 times and back. I'm projecting from a response system of someone that's not even you. And I'm having the same argument with you that I had in my past relationship, but because I haven't actually healed my nervous system and my response systems and my triggers, now I'm projecting it onto you, and we're just going to perpetuate this thing. Because the thing about our nervous system and trauma is that if we don't heal what attracted us to this toxic partner and this toxic person, we're going to keep getting this in different forms, because our nervous system wants to release that trauma response. It wants to get it out of our system. But if like our internal world is reflected through our external world, like we can always tell if situations are repeating themselves, that's because that's what actually feels safe in your nervous system. And safe doesn't necessarily mean good, right? It's a self-protection. Like for me, my self-protection was unavailable men, cheating men, domestic violence, drugs, because that was actually where I felt comfortable. Things that were safe, that were calm and quote unquote boring, and all those kind of things that I don't like the boring guy. I want the dangerous guy in the back of the motorcycle that cheats on me and calls me a bitch. Yeah, that was my vibe, right? Like it was like, ooh, why am I turned on by this? And it's like, because that was a match for my nervous system. Now that repels me, like sometimes, okay, so kind of turns me on a little bit, but like realistically, in my like natural state of being and who I want to become, it's like, no, actually, I want safe. I want a little bit of boring with a little bit of chaos, because I still do have that little part of me, a little fire, things that keep me alive. But our nervous system will continually attract what is a match for it until we learn that lesson. And it, unfortunately, will come back harder and harder and stronger. It'll start with subtle hints. And I'm sure you can see this, whether it's a health thing, whether it's a dating thing, whether it's a money thing. It started small. And then over time, it compounded, because we're like, no, it's fine. Let me dust it under the rug. And your nervous system is like, no, actually, we're trying to heal this in your body right now. And it'll come up, and we didn't go through the fight, flight, freeze response. And so we kind of have to go through our nervous system to see what gets trapped, what narrative, what story is kind of coming through in our body, so that we can release it. And when it comes to dating and relationships, we all have trauma. And when you can catch yours, that doesn't, like, this is actually like the program I'm running now called Unattached, all about attachment styles. We can't control other people's attachments, and we can't control their toxic behaviors. We can't control their trauma responses, but we can become a secure place for others to land. So when their triggers come out, you can sit there and be like, that's not mine, but are you willing to talk about that? You know, and like we can start to have conversations around that, which changes the entire dating game. But the reason this toxicity and things kind of cycles through is because we're just projecting all of this trauma and this fear of rejection and this fear of vulnerability and this fear of not being chosen that we've been doing for years. And so we want to be seen and valued, but like, what if we get hurt? So we're actually keeping some type of wall up and then wondering why no one's feeling like they're seen, heard, or felt in this world.
Wow. I do think it's very interesting how you also include money and health in this, because our relationship to money and health is equally or sometimes more important than our relationship to others. And when you start to heal that, or you start to see how those aspects can seep into your relationship with others, then I think like people really don't realize how important it is to like heal like the money mindset or like relationship with food. We've had a guest on that talked a lot about that. But you did mention like the fight, flight, freeze response and the attachment styles. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about the attachment styles and what those responses are for listeners who might not be aware of that.
Yeah, and so we all have attachments to people, and it's not bad. Like I just shared a post on this where it's like we often think like being attached to another is weak, but that's just instinct. We are tribal human beings. When it gets into this like self-abandoning codependency, that's when we got a little stickle pickle that we have to look at. So we have anxious attachment, we have avoidant, we have disorganized. This can here's the new science on it, because a lot of times, a lot of the books and a lot of the studies is like, oh, this all started from childhood. And then you have people that are like, but my childhood was fine. Why am I still anxious? Right? It's one of those things where it's like, we also learn this through childhood friendships, through the school system, like being bullied in school. We learn this through relationship patterns of people that we've dated before, and now we're projecting onto the present moment. Like, it's not just childhood. We're learning constantly. You know, and just to say like, oh, it's everything pre 7 years old and this is all that happened, like that's bypassing the reality of an entire life well lived, right? So anxious attachment is when you enter in, there's like two different ways. There's activating strategies and then there's protesting strategies. So activating is like only when that person is near you do you calm down, or you're bypassing the entire emotion and you're like, oh my God, you know, they're not there yet, quote unquote, like the potentiality of a partner. And you're like, I'll just bypass because it's this time of my life. I'm almost 30 and I should just be married by now. So I'm just going to put my rose colored glasses on, even though everything in my body says this isn't fucking working. We're going to bypass this. That happens. There's when, you know, you're keeping them alive. You're constantly thinking of them in your brain, even when they're not there. So you're not actually present. You're always anxious about it until you're calm when they're in your present. You're keeping them activated in your nervous system. We've learned this when we were children, because when parents were going and coming, yes, when we had partners that were going and coming, when we had friendships when we were growing up that were going and coming, like all of this inconsistency in our life of relationships and relational whatever connection, we're just inconsistent. This is how we get anxious, right? There's also protesting behavior where, tell me if you've done this, because I definitely have, where you start fights. Where like drama is how you get connection, because you're not getting it. Because usually what happens is anxious attachment attracts avoidant attachment, because then we're, again, self-fulfilling prophecy. They're avoiding me, so I'm going to create all this anxiety so they can then attach to me and activate them to come back in. And so protesting behavior is they're not paying attention to you. And so you are going to email them 700, I don't know who emails, text them 700 times. You're going to, you know, randomly pass by their work and be like, oh my God, I didn't know you work here. You're going to cause a fight with them and just stand there and like have some type of behavior where you're like, whatever, I'm going to roll my eyes at you to start a fight, because that gives you a false sense of connection. You can see this in children when it's like, you're not getting attention. So the kids start to throw a temper tantrum. Protesting behavior. If I do this, you will pay attention to me. This will then activate that kind of person, and it gives you this false sense. All of this, even saying it, gives me anxiety. Like, but we've done them. Like, it's just a thing. It happens. This is what we learn, especially as women, because we have learned to be emotionally manipulative to get what we want. Like, you will never see a man call a phone company and be like, I can't pay my phone bills because I can't feed my children, and I can't do this, and I can't do all these kind of emotional responses. They'll be like, I'm just not doing that. Right? But a woman will call you and be like, I can't feed my kids, I can't pay this, but I still want this for free because I don't want to return it, but and they'll try and like pull on your heartstrings. Like, we've just been trained to do that. I've seen when my mother was still alive, I've seen her do that tremendously with my family, where it's like, duh, you know, and it's like, we've just been trained that. So we see anxiety a lot. Then we have avoidant, which is we lean out, we shut down, we get into that freeze response where it's like, actually, I'm going to withdraw because I've been taught that my emotions are too much. And we see this a lot. Again, like if you've been through sexual assaults as well, like that was your survival mechanism, just to shut down and not feel it. You see that often. And so there's different cases of different things. And so when someone withdraws, you want to be able to reactivate them in a safe way, which is why this whole drama response between the anxious and avoidant, they're like the match made in heaven, because they're solidifying, like, see, avoidant is like, see, I told you relationships are crazy people with all this anxiety, and this is why I have to pull away. And then anxious people are like, see, I told you they're like this, and they pull away and they don't have emotions. And then they're just like a match made in heaven, and they're solidifying what their nervous system finds is actually safe. And so, and then there's disorganized, which is both. They're just like all over the place and detached, anxious, all over, you know? And so the way that we heal this is really looking at what's the dominant one. I mean, you can go online and take a test and whatever, but really when it comes to anxious attachment, to learn how to heal this is to learn how to be alone. And that's like the edge of the nervous system, because they're like, I don't like to be alone. This isn't working for me. But it's spending time alone. Again, with the nervous system, we don't want to stress it. We just want to stretch it. So whether it's going to a coffee shop, whether it's going on a walk, whether it's putting your phone away, whatever that stretch is to you for being alone. Like for me, when I was healing my codependency, it started with Friday nights at home alone, my crazy party ass, which really actually meant I was drinking a bottle of wine by myself for like the first month. And then we started to progress. And then, you know, now I spend plenty of time alone, although I am a people person. It's one of those things where it's like, that is actually a very comfortable place to be. And then for avoidant is actually learning how to be in people, right? Not in, that sounded wrong. Be with people and spend time with them, and really kind of, again, stretching the nervous system, not stressing it, and kind of playing with that. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of talk of the avoidant attachment style, because anxious gets, of course, the glory because there's a lot of fire within it, but avoidant isn't a bad thing, right? Like it's not a bad thing. It's not unfixable. It's not like they're wrong and they have to match the anxious one. Like we also have to match the avoidant person. We have to give them space. We have to let them wander. We have to trust, right? Like that's where the secure attachment comes from. That's, of course, the fourth one. Secure is you're able to be, I call it basically a living sanctuary. Like you're the safe place to land. And the way that you can actually help heal other people's nervous system is you focus on you. Because the question I get a lot is, how do I change my partner's attachment style? And I'm like, da, 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 da. Stop worrying about them. That's called codependency. Focus on yourself. Let me heal your, like, let's heal your and become a living sanctuary. Because when you are a secure attachment, that regulates them, and it realizes like, oh, I can come to you. I can talk to you about this. I can feel safe with you on your phone. I could feel safe when you're not present. Like it becomes this, you know, it's, if you think about it, a child learning to walk and wander and like looking back and checking on the mom, like you're the mom essentially, and you don't want the mothering energy, but it's like when you become that safe place, the people around you then feel safe enough to go wander and heal those kind of aspects of themselves. That was a very long-winded answer, but welcome to my TED Talk. What's up?
No, it was perfect. And I just, the whole time that you've been talking, of course, like selfishly, like I've just been replaying like my life through like what you're explaining. And it's just so funny because when you were talking about the anxious and the avoidant, like what used to be the anxious attachment, and a previous boyfriend of mine was definitely the avoidant. And exactly what you were saying of like, that just like fed into like my belief, like I'm unlovable. And then me being crazy would be like, I'm just not talking to you for a day or two. And then I'm like, yep, it's true. I'm not. And it was like that constant cycle of insanity. And when you were talking about like, oh, who you look for now, it's funny, my boyfriend now, our first date, he showed up, he came to the door, he opened the car door for me. He like wanted to just sit and talk and like pay for dinner. And it was like raining, and he like had an umbrella and was like, let me hold your hand over these puddles. And I was like, ew. Like literally, ew, like get away from me. Like you know, it was a good date. Like, here's the thing. I had no complaints. Like, I mean, he's still my boyfriend after 4 years. So clearly things worked out. But like, I came home from it and everyone was like, how was it? How was it? And I was like, it was like weird. Like, this guy was so nice. Like, ew. It was like, no, I'm not going back out with him. And everyone was like, Kath, what? Like, go back out with the nice guy. Like, come on. And so it's been a wild ride of like me, you know, understanding attachment styles and codependency and unlearning so many things. And it's been crazy because I felt like even though we've been in a relationship, there have been those times, like you were saying, where I'm like, I'm just focusing on me. I'm healing me. And like, I'm sorry that like you're just not a priority right now. And I'm lucky that he was like, okay, yeah, you do you. And that's just who he is. But it's just a hard thing to like learn and yourself and grow from, and then try and explain that to a partner and whatnot. So a long-winded way of saying, like, everything that you're saying, I'm with you. And also, like, for our listeners who are maybe for the first time hearing about attachment styles or hearing codependency, like, could you explain a little bit more about what codependency looks like and maybe how people could start to recognize if, you know, that's in their own life, either with their partner or a friend or work or whatever?
Yeah. So at the root, codependency is control, right? So some people don't even vibe on with the word codependency. So this is not my term, and I can't remember her name. God bless her cotton socks. There's high functioning codependency. I didn't make that up. I can't remember who did that. But it's self-abandoning, right? Codependency is, I will do this so therefore I can win your love. And I will self-abandon so I can win your love. And I will go out of my way, and I'm not thinking of self, and I'm not, and like, to be honest, women in modern society, this is glorified for us. How can I give up all of my time for you so you're happy, so you quote unquote choose me, so I can be the housewife, so I can be the best mother, so I can do da 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 da, and therefore get this one pin of award. And the high functioning codependency is not, because when we think of codependency, it's often also like addiction, right? Like, they go hand in hand with addiction, which is why people are turned off. They're like, I'm fine. But if people are constantly coming to you and you're controlling the situation, like, I'll just do it. I'm going to fix this for them. I'm going to do this. Like, I have plenty of people in my life that are kind of like that. And I'm like, no, sit, learn to receive. Like, I can do this myself. I can, like, I'm okay. You know, it might not be the way that you want to do it, but I can do it, you know? And like, looking at people like that in life, where like, you see a lot of like high executives and people like that kind of doing that as well, where it's like, I'm just going to do it myself. And then they're burnt out, and they don't have quote unquote time for themselves. So there's all of these there's spectrums of it, right? Where it's like, you can get down to the nitty gritty of how I was, where it like interfered with my health. I had no alone time. I was like leaving work. I was not hanging out with my friends. I was isolating myself. I wasn't eating enough because I was constantly worried about this other person. I was obsessing about what they were doing. It was also trauma bonding as well, which is even worse. And then there's a high functioning one where it's like, no, like, I'm a high executive. I have all this kind of stuff going on in my life, and I'm self-abandoning when it comes to work. I'm controlling every single thing. I don't trust the other person to complete this little thing. So I'm going to micromanage it. So therefore I can do it. And then I'm going to stress about it because I have no time. And so it's looking at these different aspects of it and be like, oh shit, we all have it, right? Like, this is something we all have parts of this in our life. It is totally, totally normal. And if you're listening to me talk about this, you're like, fuck, I do all of that. Like, we all do. It's just different degrees. And like, where can I catch it so that I don't? And this is where the feminine energy kind of comes also into play, where it's like, how can I learn to receive? How can I lean back and receive? Maybe it's not going to be done as well as I want it to be done, but can I trust that it'll at least get done? Especially like if you're running a team and things like this is a hard one where you're like, I'm going to claw your eyes out because it's not exactly how I want it to be, or it's not scheduled how I want it to be. It doesn't look the way, you know, but it's like, can I lean back and trust that that's the best of their capabilities and like surrender to this? And then can I also reverse this, and can I receive the help? Can I receive someone actually taking care of me? Can I trust another person to go do something else and know that whatever they choose has nothing to do with me? Right. And it comes back to releasing that need to control, releasing the need to like know what's happening around us at all times, and just trusting yourself, at the end of the day.
It's funny because now this is pretty much me. Healing that part of me, but like Kath says, she was the anxious one. I'm more of like the avoidant type. I love living alone. I always say it's a little too dangerous for me and I need to force myself to get out more. But yeah, I work at a bank right now, so obviously high functioning. There's a lot of people who have that, and you start to see the attachments to the outcome of a project, like so attached to everything that's going on, getting physically angry or upset with whatever is happening. And it's almost like it's creating those, like for me, it's been like creating those boundaries and trying to prioritize myself, make time for like working out or like space from the team. And I feel like, a lot of people don't realize that codependency isn't just in relationships with others, it's relationships with work or anything else in your life. But you did mention trauma bonding, and I wanted to ask you if you could kind of, for listeners who haven't heard that term, explain what that is, like how that might differ from codependency and how we can kind of work on that aspect.
Yeah, so this is more like a psychological need. Like I like to explain trauma bonding as like an addiction to a person. So, and I felt this, right? So my mother had unexpectedly passed from addiction when I was 22 years old. And this is when I ran away to Asia. And then I found myself again in the nervous system match with a drug addict. And all self-abandoning went out. And like, and this is very commonly paired with domestic violence. And there was a lot of domestic violence and I almost died a few times. Like that's beyond codependency. Yes, I was self-abandoning and I could not leave this person, even though my own life was at jeopardy. And it wouldn't make sense to me. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I like this? And it was our trauma meeting each other and bonding together. And like, I felt like no one else would understand me. I felt like I didn't belong. I cut out all ties from my family, my friends. Like it was only him. It was surrounded by this. And it's just deeper. Like one is I abandon self. Other is I will give up everything in my livelihood to like be with this person and self-abandon and lose myself within this person. And it's just the broad spectrum of those two. Like even like saying that story, it's like you can kind of feel it. It's like, oh yeah, like that is very different than just being like, no, I can't say no and I'm people pleasing and this is a thing. It's like, whereas I was literally on the brink of like, I may die. And that's okay because I love this person so much, which is like not okay, but that is genuinely how I felt in those moments.
I'm so sorry that you went through all of that, but glad that you've been able to heal and now take all of your experiences and help so many. Like truly, you are incredible. And I feel like kind of on the same note, but a little bit differently, like so many people in our society, if they've trauma bonded with people, there's like this other end of the spectrum where it's like a trauma contest where people are like, oh yes, you've gone through all of this. Now let me tell you, not only did I almost die, but I also like did this, and this. And it's like almost been, in my experience, like glorifying trauma and making it something like, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't be proud of what they've overcome, but like making it like the actual trauma and like what you've been through, like a medal and like something that like you can put others down for, be like, oh, your life or your trauma like wasn't as bad as mine. And so I always just felt like, oh my gosh, my trauma doesn't matter. Like I've been through nothing compared to these people. So I shut up, Kath, like don't even talk about it. And then, after therapy and realizing trauma is still trauma, it still impacts you and who you are. So I feel like we're in this like weird space around trauma and people just don't even know how to dialogue about it. And people are like, is it good? Is it bad? Is it whatever? And so what are your like thoughts on our society's current view of trauma? And I'm also really curious, like, what's your view, especially as someone who talks about it with women all the time?
Yeah. So because of what's happened the last 2 years, and this is like a buzzword, right? We all have trauma. and we all want to talk about it because we've all been locked in our houses, and all we get to think about is who do we get to point a finger at? And we have to think about ourselves, and thankfully people have gone on this self-development journey, and we're seeing a lot of conversations around this, and like, thank goodness it's coming out of the shadows. And I literally was having this conversation with my family when we went home, because when you're telling a story, good or bad, humans want to figure out how to relate. And unfortunately, the way that we've been learned to communicate is, yeah, and this happened to me. Not realizing that when you do that, you're not connecting, you're competing, and you're actually bypassing that current person's story. And so when you hear someone doing that, and like, instead of getting angry and feeling like, oh, they just didn't listen, whatever, it's looking at like, oh, they're trying to connect. And that's not it, you know, but like, I can give appreciation. They just haven't learned the proper communication style. So again, we give the compassion we pray for. So you sit there and you're like, okay, like, I can see you're trying to connect. And if you do have a closeness with that person, it's to sit there and like say that, like, hey, I know you're trying to connect right now, but I really feel like you're not validating what I said. And I'm not trying to compete and have like this trauma pissing contest with you. I'm just trying to share my heart. And maybe this is how I would want you to communicate with me, but I can also validate your story too, because I can understand that's super hard on you. And like, having conversations around that, so we can learn to communicate in this way. But really at the core, that's someone that's trying to just connect with you. And sometimes that can feel like a competition. But you said something else in that, where it's, I don't want to talk about my trauma because it's not valid, because it's not as big. This is so huge. This is so huge. And I see this a lot with my work, because I do have a lot of big T trauma in my life, from sexual assaults to addiction to death to abuse. Like, there is a lot. So what about the people, and I saw this a lot when I was in IBS, what about the people that have trauma because they were in a car accident and their body just hasn't released it? They can't come and tell their story. That's not the space, right? Like, it's helping understand that my trauma to me is different from your, like, you can have trauma from a heartbreak, you can have trauma from food poisoning, you can have trauma from, I don't know, your flight got canceled and now you're afraid of whatever. Like, it's because what trauma actually is a trapped emotion in your body. We didn't go through the 3 stages, fight, flight, freeze, and then you shake it off and whatever, and you get through it and you move. Like, we didn't go through that. So now you have the trapped emotion, and this is how we get trauma responses. Like, I used to be afraid of like walking the street. I mean, I still am. Like, I still get a fright from crossing the street, and I've always like sat and I'm like, why? Like, you're 30 years old. Why the fuck can you not cross the street? What is this? Like, what is wrong with you? And I realized, and then I asked my dad, I was like, what is this? Like, out of pure curiosity. He's like, oh yeah, like, you almost got hit by a car when you were like 2 years old and it's stored in your body. I don't remember that. Like, he's like, your godmother pulled you away, whatever. But like, it's not an actual fear, but my body feels it, right? To me, that's not a trauma because I don't even remember it. My body does though. So am I supposed to tell my body, no, that's not big enough compared to the other things that have happened in your life, so therefore let's squash it? It's like, no, you silly human, let's nurture that like inner child that needs to come through. And so if someone's like, I have trauma from stubbing my toe, I burnt my hand one time, like, we all have these things that you can feel it when you're in tune with your body. Like, your body will always tell you something before your brain can start to make a narrative around it. And so it's looking at this and being like, oh, so although these people have experienced this, mine is still valid, right? Like, it goes back to self-worth, not does my trauma fit in this container and do I have a space? It's really down to like, what is my narrative? Am I saying this because it's beneficial for the whole, or am I saying this because I want to be seen and validated in my trauma? And maybe that's the block, right? Because sometimes we do wear our trauma as a badge of honor, where it's like, well, I've been through this, so therefore, and to be honest, I feel like we all have that kind of chapter in our life because we want to be that warrior. But like, if you met me today, you would have no idea any of this happened in my life, right? Whereas before, if you met me 4 years ago, kind of all I talked about, because I was like, this is what I did. Look at how proud I am. Now it's, of course, it's part of my job, like, definitely. But if you meet me out for coffee, like, you're never going to fucking know, you know, it's not a thing that's ever talked about. But like, there's different levels of the healing journey. So again, when you're in that space, it's like, it's reflecting back, like, why do I think I can't share this story? You know, is it really that my story isn't valid? And then working through that, whether it's with yourself or another, to be like, maybe that is a trauma response as well. And maybe that's why it's not healing. And maybe that's why it's cycling through, because I'm not giving it the light that it needs, because shame is so fucking real when it comes to trauma, and shame can exist when we bring light to something. But if we're continually keeping it inside of ourselves because we don't feel like it's big enough or it's worthy enough, that's how we start to cycle things through. And that's how we start to get these toxic patterns and, you know, responses that continually cycle and show up, whether in health issues or relationship issues or money issues, because we're kind of sucking it down. The shame, we're like trying to silence it. And like the whole mission in life is to slay shame, to bring light to it, to sit there and be like, actually, my journey is so valid, whether it was a car accident or whether it was domestic violence, it doesn't fucking matter. Trauma is trauma stored in the body. And you don't really get a choice in how your body is going to store certain life events. It's just this, can I give permission and grace to let this fully come through this whole cycle? So therefore I can release it from my nervous system and heal. So it's looking at this whole space of like, one, putting in the I statement, why do I not feel like it's worthy? And then when someone comes in and they're kind of interjecting your story and what have you, being able to sit there and be like, oh, they're trying to connect right now. And although this isn't the way that I necessarily connect, I can either communicate with them effectively or look at your life and see how you maybe do that sometimes too, because I know I do too, you know, and to sit there and be like, oh, unfortunately, the best teachers are when we look at things and we're like, I wouldn't do it that way. And instead of getting mad at a person for how they're doing it, it's sitting there and going, I see they're trying to connect here. Can I give grace and permission for what they're doing? And now can I start a different conversation to either model what I would hope they would do next or use this next time when I'm communicating my story to someone?
Wow. I swear, I feel like I'm sitting through a therapy session right now. This is amazing. Well, I think it's interesting because I've also been hearing a lot about like the idea of like stress versus like perceived stress. And it reminds me of that a little bit. Like the two people could have gone through the same trauma per se, like even siblings, but they could have experienced it in different ways, or they could have taken away different things from that. And like, that's why you see like different children or like siblings or friends that went through something, like they're acting out in different ways because of, like you said, the way the body stores it. But I think you gave some pretty good, like tangible, like takeaways for our listeners. And when I started kind of diving into the whole idea of shame and vulnerability, it was because of Brene Brown. And she talked a lot about like the story I tell myself, and like reframing that story is super important for how you like experience these things or how you think about what you've experienced. But I'm curious kind of now the other side for maybe people who know someone who have experienced trauma but want to learn how to connect better rather than that competing aspect. Like what are things that they can say? Like how can they give others the space to speak about what they want to speak about and like feel comfortable with it?
Yeah. And so if you're really curious about what someone's been through or how to support someone, is like, how present can you be when that person is there without trying to fix it, without trying to protect, without trying to project? Can you just sit in what that story that person is telling you? Not like, don't relate like there isn't. And there's also this fabulous phrase that you can ask. Do you just want to vent, or do you need or do you want advice? Especially in the coaching space, especially in the podcasting, self-development, whatever, we do this thing where, oh, I've heard this somewhere, or I've studied this or whatever, therefore let me fix this for you from what I've heard here. But what I've learned through my closest friendships and relationships and things like that is sometimes people just want to fucking bitch about it. Yes, it will get to a point. And my stepmom did this for me so lovingly after my domestic violence and leaving it. And I had cycled through it for like a year. And she was like, what makes you feel you're so important? Because you will hit an edge where it's like, okay, and now what? Because you do see this a lot because our amygdala loves drama and whatever. Hello, the news. That sometimes people just want to stay in their story. And that's when you get the choice to kind of move out of that and be like, actually, this doesn't align with the path that I want to go on. But I can, and like what we call it in Al-Anon and Coda is like, I'm going to detach with love. Like, I'm going to remove myself from this, but I still love you. I'm available for this when you're ready to move through it. You create this container. They're probably going to get pissed. They're probably going to say some things because this was, again, your trauma bond. You guys got along in the context of that part of your life and what have you, and talking about boys and drugs and drama and whatever. And then you elevate and you're like, actually, that doesn't serve me anymore. And sometimes they want to bring you back down because it's a reflection of that. But if your friend is really going through something, a loss, a breakup, sexual assault, an eating disorder, health issues, like stubbing their fucking toe. Like, I don't know, it means a lot to them. Like, can you just sit there and just be like, yeah, you know, and just like honestly ask the question, like, do you just want to vent? Do you need advice? Because then you know where you stand. And then can you be as present as fucking possible? Because it's so like, in this day and age, we really suck at listening. We really fucking do, because we're constantly hearing things through a lens of how do I want to respond? What can I give? How can I? We don't know how to just like listen and receive. And that's all a lot of people want right now. It's just like, I want someone to fucking actually listen to me, be so present with me, shoulders directed at them, listening, eye contact. I'm here, I'm present. That goes wonders. You do not have to fix your friend's problems. You also don't even try, because then you're gypping them of that opportunity of being their own rising phoenix rising and being their own hero of their own journey. Like, don't even try unless they ask. But like, my rule of thumb is like, I will give advice once and I won't give it again unless they ask. And that's it. I won't keep doing it. I won't keep pushing. I won't whatever, because it's like, they don't fucking want it. If they wanted it, they know my job. Hi, like they can come if they want. But like most times it's like, I just want a friend. And like, it happens. Like I have my best friend. I don't know why I'm pointing right now. Like, you guys know that she's in the other room. But like she's in the other room, but it's like, sometimes I'll get tripped up and she's like, I want a friend right now. I don't want a mentor. And I'm like, fabulous. What do you need? And like quickly snap out of it. But it's like being able to have that communication style with your friends, with your loved ones, with your parents, whatever. It's like, set the container, right? Like, what do you need out of this? And then you get to be there with them, but like, be there with them, not with your story, not with your fixing, like not with your projections, just like listen. And if they want help, be there, but don't go into codependency trying to fix it kind of help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, these are such good tips, because I do feel like a lot of people struggle with how to show up for others, not because they don't care, quite the opposite. They care so much that they want to do the right thing, say the right thing, you know, offer the right thing. And, you know, through some life experience, I realized like there is no right thing for, especially like if you were like, oh, can you tell me the right thing to do, like blanket statement, like it's not going to be the same for every person. But like just exactly what you said, showing up, giving people the space is like the absolute best thing that you can do. And then they can kind of communicate with you what they need, what their right thing is. And so I'm curious from the other lens, because this is something that I've struggled with. I feel like I'm pretty okay at giving people space and just being a listening ear and not trying to intrude too much. But when it comes to myself and like asking people like, hey, I could really use this, or I actually don't need that, so please stop. Like that's where I really struggle. And I think that over the last year, I've done a lot of work on setting boundaries. And that's kind of what I was alluding to when I was saying with my boyfriend, Luke, like I needed to time for me. And it was really time to figure out, shoot, like I've never set boundaries in my life and I don't know what they are. So I need to figure this out. So for anybody on the other side who's going through something, or maybe isn't, but isn't happy with current relationships at work, romantically, with their family, like, do you have any advice on how someone can start setting clear boundaries to protect their peace?
Yes. One, come hang out in the fall, because I have a banging ass program that's coming out with this.
Yeah.
Two, when it comes to boundaries, first understand what are your values. Get crystal fucking clear on your values. Then your boundaries will come naturally, because here's my value: health, family, faith, spirituality, whatever. Your boundaries will come in. My morning routine, my evening routine, my only time of the week that I'm ever going to see you, because I don't actually need to spend all my time dating. Whatever it is, like here's where it comes in, because your boundaries will come in. And you come in, here's the thing: boundaries are not fucking moats to protect your soul. This is not what they're there for. Boundaries are this, they protect my value system. But nowadays, because we're so protective and we're so afraid of vulnerability and we're so in this wounded feminine protective energy, we build up these fucking fortresses where it's like, this is my boundary. No. And it's like, whoa, mate, no, that is not sexy. That is a moat. And no one wants to be around that. You know what I mean? We want to sit there and we want to create these boundaries of like, from this, like, I love myself so much. And therefore, the sexiest thing in my life is my morning routine. Like, it turns me on. So please don't fuck with it. Here we go. We can still have a great night. We can do our things, but do not come out of this bedroom for at least 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Like, moving through things like that. But it's like, I'm not doing this. Like, you fuck. And I did this when I first started. I'm getting hyped, clearly. When I first started with this whole like routines and boundaries and whatever. And this is like, I'm speaking from experience, because I would get so irritated with the men that I was dating, where it's like, no, I can't date because you're messing with my routine. You're messing with my healing. You're getting in the way, da da da. Where it's like, what are you protecting yourself from? Like, there's such a sexier way that you can communicate this from a space of like, I value my space and my time, and I can only see you on Thursdays because that's my date day, or maybe on Saturdays if I'm not hanging out with my girls. But it's like, here's how I work. This is what I've already put in place of myself, because this is what I want out of my juicy orgasmic life. And here's how you can fit into it. And this is how we get to play with the co-creation of the universe, instead of like, I'm so afraid that you're going to fall in love with me and therefore you're going to fuck with my energy and da 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 da. So here's my wall. Like, no, that's a trauma response, right? It's like, can you be vulnerable within your boundaries? Can you make it so it's just this, I'm speaking to you, my value system. I'm not creating a moat to protect me from you. There's like two different ways. Do you feel what I'm trying to say? I don't know if I'm articulating it correctly, but it's like two different energies behind what are your values? What are your boundaries? Is it to protect yourself, or is it because you love yourself? Like, there's two different ways of setting them.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I'm a little bit of the moat building person, so I totally understand that too. But yeah, no, I think it comes from a place of, protection and almost like inflexibility a little bit, like the way you're explaining it. So I guess I know we're a little over time, but want to ask one last question before we get to our rapid fire questions. But for those people who are like building the moats or super like protection modes, like how do they, well, I guess first go into recognizing that they are really protecting and not just building those boundaries, and then two, start to kind of like push the boundaries a little bit and let people in or let down those walls.
Yeah, so in any 12-step program, they talk about the 3 A's. So it's awareness, acceptance, action, right? So awareness, just what you just did. I'm very much the moat person. This is what I'm doing. Fantastic, cool. We noticed it. And then we move into the acceptance of, this is just me. Like, instead of belittling yourself and being like, you, da 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 da, whatever narrative you have in your head, like beating yourself up, getting mean about it. We need to fix this now. And coming in with this like almighty, mothering, wounded, let me fix this kind of you're punished energy. Like, that works for no one. Have you ever been grounded? That never actually works. And then we move into the action piece. Okay, so what would that next space be, where it's like, when I feel that happening? Good example, when I'm dating and this guy wants to take me out, and here's my boundary in this, and I'm trying to think of a freaking example right now, but my brain is going blank. I'll stick to the morning routine because that's the one that I did. This man wants to take me out on the town, and he wants to show me, and like, instead of really living my life in flow and trust and like, oh my God, this could be a love story for the ages, and he wants to show me around and he's so good and I'm getting so excited about it, and then clench, what if he breaks my heart? Like, we don't even know we're doing it, but we do it, and then we're like, oh my God, it's like 8 o'clock and I'm Cinderella and I need to go home. And it's like, because my morning routine, and it's like, you're having a good time. What do you mean? Like, you'll survive. And it's like, you can feel, and then like we build up these fortresses where it's like, no, it's too good. Like, we have this resistance to pleasure where it's like, no, this feels so good, because what if it's gone? And it's like, then you're back to where you started, and who really fucking cares? Like, it's working through that narrative and really looking at that way, where it's like, of course, like, set your boundaries and like set your standards, set your expectations from the very beginning. Don't wait the whole 3 months little game thing. Like, do it at the beginning so they can respond and whatever. But look at it and it's like, is this actually protecting me because I don't want to actually fall in love, or I don't want to do this? And like, that kind of freaks me out. Or am I doing it from a space of like, yeah, actually my morning routine matters to me, and like, is it cool if we, get home by 10? Is it cool if we whatever, like put a little bit of a context around this and kind of play with it in a way that it's like, it's fluid. I'm still going to get this done because my value system is health. I'm still going to get my workout in. I'm not going to stay out till 4 a.m., but I can maybe stay out till 10. It's like, where can I play with my nervous system so I can stretch it instead of stress it? If it's going to fucking stretch you out, that like, you're like, oh my God, no, 10 p.m. is way too late for me. And oh my, things like that. Don't do that. Do not do that. Like, if that's how it feels in your body, like all alarm bells are going off and you're like, I can't even be present because this is not right. That's when that's a stretch. That's way too far. Or a stress. If it's like, ooh, that feels like a little bit of an edge, I can see that if I go back in my dating history, and this is usually when I shut things down, it's like, okay, so where can I take action on that and like lean into it? How can I practice this? How can I create safety in this and start to really move this around? So it's not so much of a, I'm building a fucking moat here and you cannot enter. And like, actually, here's my drawbridge. And this is actually what I do because I love myself so much. And this is how I hold myself and the standard I have. I hope that explained it correctly. I'm just like rambling at this point.
No, it was amazing. And it's helpful because at the start of learning what boundaries were and setting them, I was definitely the moat builder. I was definitely, like you said, like, no, we cannot do this because I just committed to all of these things. And Luke's like, what the hell? Like, where'd my girlfriend go? And who are you? And what do you mean we can't like spend our Sundays in bed drinking champagne because that was like our time together? And like, what, we're just never doing this again? You're just on health and we're done. And so I like, thankfully he respectfully like pushed back and being like, hello, are you still you? Like, what's going on? And then when you were saying like stretch, okay, we can do both. Like, I don't have to like completely cut you out and be like, our time together, none, because I'm doing me. Like, so I like really resonated with that. And I feel like we're just getting so much juice out of you. Melissa, what would you think if the last few questions that we had prepped, we just make rapid fire and do like an extended rapid fire?
Sure.
Because I just feel like you just have so much good things to say. And I'm like obsessed with your one-liners. I'm like, okay, this will be used for promotion. Whatever. Yep. So first rapid fire is, since red flags are the trend this year, what are like one or two of the biggest red flags you think our listeners should look out for?
They only talk about themselves. 1, leave. And they don't open your door. Leave.
Hell yes. Love that. Okay. What advice do you have for people who are going through a breakup or trying to get over someone?
1, come hang out at my free masterclass that's happening next week. 2, here's the biggest thing. I just went through a rupture and it rocked me open. Understand that what's like, if not this, something better, like hold that to your core. If not this, something better is coming. And 2, allow yourself to fill the void of where the connection with your beloved once was. So now I take Mondays and Fridays off. It's my dream state. It's whatever. I went traveling. I went traveling for the last 6 weeks to fill that love back up with yourself, because you're not getting the oxytocin, the serotonin, the dopamine. You're not getting the hormones that you got from a beloved. So can you fill that up yourself and like look at it in that space? Not like, let's get drunk and sleep with a whole bunch of people and da da da, or like, let's put up all walls and create disconnection. It's like, where can I really infuse more play and pleasure? And what does that look like for me so that I can really quantum leap this healing and know that if not this, something better.
Oh yeah. Why do you think it's important for people to heal their guts?
Ooh, that gut-brain connection, metabolic, neuroinflammation, polyvagal theory. It's like, if your body doesn't feel safe in your body, like if your metabolism is not regulated, doing any type of trauma work, any type of therapy, somatics, relationship building, like if your body doesn't feel safe, you're always going to be popping off the handle. Like you need to get the foundation down first and foremost.
So what advice would you give to single women?
Love this chapter. You are never going to get it again. Stop trying to fucking rush it. This is like, we've spent our entire lives trying to, I can't wait till I'm in like 10 years old because it's double digits. I can't wait till I'm 13 because I'm a teenager. I can't wait till I'm 16 so I can drive a car. Like we're always trying to jump. Like yes, I get it. We want connection. We want to belong. We want that love story for the fucking ages. But like, can you actually trust yourself a little bit that that's going to eventually come? And this singleness is never going to be here again. Like, soak it all up. And the more you do you, like, I am having the best. This is my favorite version of myself. And I've been single for 3 months. And I'm like, I'm obsessed with me. Like, I love it. But it's like, not out of a like protection way. It's like, I know within the next few months I will meet the love of my life. I already know that, right? So why am I rushing it? You know, can you, like, this is why I created Sacred Singlehood, like the program, because it's like, this is such a sacred time. When you come at things from desperate energy, we're only going to get desperate relationships. When you come in it of like, this is an amplifier to what I am already amped up about, which is me. Oh, the sky is not even the limit.
Yes. And what is one thing you would recommend to couples they can do to make their relationship a little stronger?
Go and do things beyond just dinner dates. Go and do activities that require like team building, like going to cooking classes, going to climbing, going to something. Like, do something that's beyond just the traditional, let's talk about our fucking problems and do things. Like, show to yourselves how you guys are on a team together.
I love that. I think it helps build trust and everything. And I think a lot of the things that you're saying too, the common theme is presence that I did want to say. Like, I think just being in the present moment and not living for the next thing or not living in the past or the future, just really just being there is so important and so underrated.
Exactly. And go have some sex, obviously.
Obviously. All right. So now we have the last 3 rapid fire questions, which we ask all of our guests. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone starting their health journey today?
Really have a solid look of where you're at right now. Like, we like to do this thing in life where it's like, let me fast forward to where I want to leap without actually looking at where is your foundation currently at. So what are you doing every single day, right? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? How's your self-pleasure? How are you exercising? Like, where are you truly at? And is that consistent? And then like, do a self-inquiry. A lot of the times we don't want to look at ourselves because we're like, oh, that will make me wrong because I know I'm not doing what's right. It's like, no, look at it with curious eyes instead of critiquing eyes and just start from there. But once you know, you're going to be able to see your blind spots so easily and be like, ah, fuck, I'm not sleeping. Damn it. Okay, let me go fix that, you know?
I'm laughing because that's just me. Completely not sleeping. Common theme, so perfect.
But me too. Like, I'm like, yay, health guru. Then I'm like, I slept 6 hours yesterday because I was having too much fun. So bye.
Balance, right?
Always.
Flexibility. Absolutely. And what do you think the future of health looks like?
Ooh, feminine. Like, it's like we have lived in a context of eat at this time, do it this time, here's a strategy. And it's very masculine, linear kind of way where we've lost this whole intuitive trusting of ourselves. And so I think we're leaning back into this soft, like, what brings you pleasure? Can you infuse that? Can we make that sexy? Can we allow that to turn you on? I think it's a lot more fluid. And in that, people learning to trust themselves, and they're not going to be like, I'm going to eat this whole pint of ice cream and I'm going to lose myself and I'm going to, you know, do all these drugs and drink all the time. It's like, no, because you trust yourself and you love yourself. So how are you actually going to respond in this fluid nature of balance and play and pleasure and joy and delight and all the kind of things?
Love that answer so much. All right. So our last one is, since this is connecting the dots, can you tell our listeners how they can connect with you, where they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, I have a banging ass social media. Just kidding. But not really. I do love it. My personal one is
you do.
I love it. I'm like, it's my own personal magazine. My personal one is it's Laura Patricia Martin. So ITS, Laura Patricia Martin. Our company, our brand, our courses, our podcast is Healing to Happy. So Healing to Happy. You get a flavor of life on both. Like on our company one, it's more so like strategy and information and things like that. And then on mine, you kind of just get the implementation of like what's on the other side when we implement these kind of things, which is for me a really cool contrast. And you'll probably get either a message from me or my team being like, because we like to keep it a party on the internet. And then we have programs and podcasts and a bunch. If you're in Dallas, we have an event coming up in the end of August and all that kind of stuff. So come hang out.
Hey, amazing. Well, thank you so much. We will definitely make sure that everyone checks out your stuff. We will put your links in the show notes, and we are just so grateful to have this conversation, therapy session, psychoanalysis, whatever you want to call it. We're grateful for it.
Yeah, so grateful. It was such a great conversation, and I'm sure all of our listeners got so much out of it because I know we definitely did. So thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Connecting the Dots. If there was something that resonated with you, or you simply enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, leave a 5-star rating and written review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can be the first to know when a new episode is released. And if you'd like to further support us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Instagram at connectingthedots.podcast on both platforms. We're also on TikTok at Connecting the Dots Podcast.
We have intentionally curated resource guides that go with every episode to give you the tools, resources, and information you need to make tangible changes at home. You can purchase these guides at kathleencarney.com/resources. If you would like to work with me directly, you can also go to kathleencarney.com/services and book a free discovery call to decide which service is right for you. Make sure you follow me at Kathleen Carney Wellness on Instagram and TikTok.
And I'm Melissa Chamis on Instagram and The Lazy Yogi separated by underscores on TikTok. And we'll link all this information in the show notes to make it easier for you.
We appreciate your continued support and look forward to hanging with you next week.